Most TFT players don't know that the strongest 3-cost carry in the game isn't the S tier stuff, not Jinx, not Veigar, but Hecarim. But perhaps the first important question, what are the conditions to play Hecarim? In this episode of In2D, we're going to hop on board with 4-time world finalist Volta Hecarim from France to show you why this comp is serious and not just horse and crown. Let's start by talking about the general conditions that you would look for to play a Hecarim game. First off, if you get something really strong for reroll augments to start off the game, like March of Progress, Patience is a Virtue, or even Pandora's Bench, is something you can think about. However, if you do take something like Pandora's Bench, make sure it's an econ portal, like Gold Subscription or Crab Rave, because you're going to need the extra gold to hold all those units on your bench. You also want to have things like Swords and Cloaks ready to go, because the best in slot items for Hecarim are Stairs Gauge, Bloodthirster, and Quicksilver. And that requires 2 swords and 2 cloaks. Also, in the other ideal condition, other people are calling things in the lobby like Jinx and Wukong or Veigar Vex, so they're pulling so many 3-costs out of the pool. And you want to make sure there's not too many people playing Hecarim, so if they're playing like a warrior reroll, they're going to be taking Hecarims out of the pool. If you see multiple players of that in the lobby, chances are it's going to be really hard to hit Hecarim. If you're looking for a singular condition, like you hit this and you're going to no scout, no pivot, one of them is find your center Hecarim. It actually has something like crazy, like a 40% win rate. Sylvanmere Dawn is insane as well. If you can get that onto Hecarim, it's clearly his best item by far. And this ends up replacing the Bloodthirster. Bloodthirster is the item that you cut for all of the artifacts. Or you get Unleash the Beast. If you do get this, you can go for 2 Stairs Gauge and no need for Quicksilver because now you have built-in Quicksilver for the effect. Here's the core example of a standard line that you would play for Hecarim 3. Have Neela be the item holder because she's a really good substitute until you can hit Hecarim. A lot of times people will probably rush and put items on Hecarim 1, but make sure you have a solid 2-star unit. In fact, sometimes I put it on Akali or Jax instead, whenever I 2-star first. Add an Eldritch at 5 because it's really easy. You can tag in Shen to start the Pyro stacks at 6. At 7 is where we're going to be staying, so we're going to be rolling for Hecarim 3 here. And you're going to be playing Vive Multi-Strikers, and you have a flexible spot, but if you do hit a Multi-Striker emblem of some sort, you can sub out this Zillion and play Kalista instead, and put the Multi-Striker emblem onto Shen, and therefore you have 7. Always play 7 Multi-Striker the moment you can, because the amount of healing is really huge. Level 8, add Camille, and level 9, if you can, get to Xerath. In this video, we're also going to go through another variation that plays around Katarina as your duo carry. This is primarily because you're rolling at 7, so you have maximum odds for 3 costs, and as you guys know, when you reroll, in general, you want to have a duo carry of some kind to offload the amount of responsibilities on one single carry. And so, because Katarina ends up being a good 3 cost, and it complements Warrior with Akali, you end up playing it, and you get the extra fairy item through the Kalista. You don't actually play 7 Multi-Strikers, which is a little bit surprising, but it actually is quite good if you can hit Katarina 3. And then you pretty much play 5 Multi-Strikers and you play around the Arcana instead of 7. And so the game plan is to play around 5 Multi-Strikers Warrior with Katarina, and then add more Arcana and replace Camille for the Chrono in the late stages of the game. The item priority for Hecarim is Stairs Gauge, and then Quicksilver, in my opinion, and then Bloodthirster. Even though Bloodthirster is more useful than Quicksilver in stage 2 and 3, the reality is Bloodthirster is a pretty subbable item. What I mean by that is you can actually play a bunch of different flex options. We mentioned Sylvanmere Dawn being one of them, but you can also play things like Prowler's Claw, Mittens, Death Defiance, Spectral Cutlass. And if you do end up playing that, you sub out the Bloodthirster because you can't really replicate the other effects very easily. You can't really replicate Quicksilver unless you have Unleash the Beast or a Banshees. And you can't really get this amount of 80 burst with that HP gain. And Stairs Gauge is just the best item in general. I'd rather have Stairs Gauge than BT as my first item. And so that's why the priority probably goes like this. The first cloak goes to Quicksilver, unless you have something like Banshees or Unleash the Beast. Utility goes on Ashe and Kalista, whatever range unit. I would try to prioritize Last Whisper and Red Buff before Rage Blade because you need these bows to make sure that you can get past your enemy tanks. The nice thing about Katarina is that she actually uses the other components that you don't want in the composition, so it really helps your item economy. So things like Tears, Rods, and Gloves, which is not really good for Hecarim generally, you can just slam on Katarina. Hand of Justice and Jewel Gauntlet is great. Bloodthirster is actually quite good on Katarina. Some even argue that it might be better, but you kind of need your swords. So, like, the Bloodthirster would rather be on Hecarim than Katarina. And then Crown Guard's also totally fine to play, or Death Cap, or some of these other just straight-up AP items that you would put on Katarina. So, if you end up finding a multitude of rods, just slam those items onto cat. All right, we're hopping on board with Voltaire. He's one of the most accomplished French players of all time. He's made it to 4 world championships, and he likes to play a bunch of off-meta comps, even in tournament, and he has a lot of success doing it. He's kind of known as a dark tech peddler, but be warned, sometimes copying his comps is playing with fire. The portal is loose subscription, so we're naturally going to be playing for comps that are a little bit on the weirder side. You get access to a lot more resources than you normally do. We're gonna start things off by playing around our pair and just buying at the shop, so nothing too crazy here on 1-3. And on 1-4, we hit an Elise 2, which is great. And we held on to Nico so we can play around our Shapeshifter start and Hunters. Really common setup to play around for Shapeshifters is Dragons, because you get access to early anti-heal and you don't have to worry too much about building things like Sunfire or Red Buff or Morello. So I expect him to probably pick up this Jace here somehow. Okay, taking a look at his 2 augments. I know what you're thinking. This is loose subscription. Flexible is great because Flexible is one of the best gold augments ever made. It's so insane. They've nerfed this so many times, and yet its win rate is ridiculous. And loose subscription also might give you spatulas and tome of traits, so Flexible ends up getting even more value than usual. But just a spoiler alert, he's not going to click it. I think if I was reviewing a top player VOD, or if I was in a competitive setting myself, I would definitely click Flexible and not think twice about it, but he's going to be skipping that. But let's go ahead and just talk about some of the other augments as well. Sleight of Hand actually is quite good in this spot as well, because you actually have a upgraded unit you can play around. Sleight of Hand is just really good when you have upgraded units that are melee and can just use a variety of items. So you would slam Sleight of Hand onto Elise. You probably would start to play around the second glove, maybe a second pair of these gloves, and try to push tempo into level 8, and then try to play around a bunch of 4 costs that are high value. But Unleash the Beast is just really good, and it gives you direction. Not to mention that it's not just a good augment for rerolling Hecarim, but it's also just quite good on like Fiora and Briar and other melee champions at 4 and 5 costs. So in the worst case scenario, you take Unleash the Beast and you're contested, you can actually just pivot out and go instead for a 4 and 5 cost with Unleash the Beast and get immense value. Scouting around a little bit, sees Sugarcraft, sees the Wandering Trainer. He ends up rolling and seeing Deja Vu. Deja Vu is quite weak. You don't have any bows or rods, no Gallios, only 1 portal unit, so it's not really a Deja Vu start. Rolls into Higher Education, which is a Scholar augment, but just doesn't really fit very well. So we're going to go with Unleash the Beast. We're going to level. We're going to Major Wish. We get an extra champion, which gives us a Twitch pair, I believe. And we slam a Steadfast Heart, which actually has really good synergy with the Steris Gauge. A lot of people might not remember, but Steadfast Heart actually gives you bonus health, and that synergizes with Steris Gauge that gives you percentage health as well. So there's a little bit of item synergy there. The second thing is he's going to be playing into Dragon the moment we find Shyvana, so he doesn't need to slam Sunfire. And then the third is he gets to keep a belt open for a second Steris Gauge. And remember kind of what we're going back to before, which is you don't actually even have to slam Steris Gauge on the same unit twice. You actually can just spread it out. Let's say you're playing Warrior reroll. You can put one on Neela and one on Fiora, or one on Akali, or have one on all 3 of them and get immense value across the board. That is very similar to another augment like Hand of Justice and Idealism in the past sets, where you could just play multiple carries, especially melee ones, with Hand of Justice. But if he does find double Steris Gauge, stacking Hecarim is ideal. Okay, pretty easy win here, so we can probably skip ahead. Volta is also focusing on making a bunch of economy here, making sure that he's getting clean intervals of 20. He is going up against another item tempo start, which is double Ruden's category 5, and I don't think we have the DPS to actually deal with this because it kills our backline very quickly. Looks like we are outmatched for this one, and we lose our streak, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. On Carousel, we would love to get another sword, and looks like we are. Actually, a blessing in disguise to lose that fight because we improve by 1 placement for pick priorities, so we end up getting a second Steris Gauge, and now we can slam that, which is great. And now we level, we copycat, and we're going to try and kill a unit that helps our board. He can scout around and see if other people have Shyvana 2, for example. That copy Shyvana would be great. I think that we just played that person, though, so we can't actually fight them. Looks like there's a Vex that we can aim at. Hey, look at that. High roll. We actually hit the Vex. It could actually matter for positioning, so you have to be a little bit mindful about that. If the Galio and the Vex switch, for example, then he'll probably want to switch on the other side. But they were mostly 1 cost, so it's not a big deal. All right, easy win. We're off to the races. He ends up not making gold here because he knows that Jace is going to be his next unit, and he's holding Nomsy pair. He could have actually made 30 gold, I believe, if he sold everything, because the Vex ended up giving him +3 gold. I think that's wise because he recognizes that the most important thing for level 7 reroll is to try and get to level 7 with as much HP and gold as possible and the right items. I think one thing that people kind of mess up when they play 3-cost reroll is they think that they have to play the units that they're rerolling on the board and itemize them as soon as possible. So let's say you're going for Wukong Jinx or you're going for Veigar Vex. The moment you hit Jinx, I see a lot of people just sell whatever they are doing and they put Jinx on their board and they put all their items on a 1-star Jinx or all their items on a 1-star Veigar. And that could work out for them, but they end up losing or even just lose streaking a lot because they're just unupgraded units and you're just playing like 1-stars across the board. What you should be thinking about is playing around, say, a Twitch 2 and a Namzi 2 over Jinx, or a Seraphine and a Blitzcrank over Veigar Vex. That ends up being much more stable and getting you to that level 7 with as much HP as possible. Because if you think about it, if you already have the items like these double stairs gauge and I guess a Hand of Justice for Hecarim, his items are already done. So what's the advantage of lose streaking and having carousel priority? I mean, I guess picking the unit? Or maybe you want to build your 5th most important item. Oh my god, speaking of items, Atoma Traits pops up. Now, Atoma Traits, if you guys don't remember, the thing to recall is 6, 8, 10, 12. You need 6 traits on your board. It doesn't have to be active. So these are 3 active traits and a bunch of inactive traits. You just need 6 of them on your board. And you need to play it for 1 round to get 1 tailored emblem. Right now, Volta has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So he has 3 tailored emblems based off of traits on his board. And one thing I really like is that he's teching in Dragon. Dragon actually doesn't count towards the Atoma Traits because Dragon, you can't, there's no such thing as a Dragon emblem. And so actually there's only 9 options and he'll get 3 of them. And he's really hoping that he gets something like, you know, Warrior or Multi-Striker. All right, real quick, let's interrupt myself to look at these augments. So Featherweight's late game specialist and combat bandages. Featherweights is for the 1 and 2 costs, and Hecarim's with 3 costs. Let's not pick that. Featherweights would make more sense if we were trying to play around Ash and Jax, but we aren't, or even Cassidy and Kali, but clearly we are not. Late game specialist is for level 9, and we're not going to level 9 for a very long time. Although in loose subscription or Crab Rave or, you know, Scuttle Puddle, Gold subscription, this is much better. As a current PSA, combat bandages is currently bugged. You actually don't want to pick combat bandages. You sometimes might have to because it might be the only option that's pickable, but apparently it stops working in like stage 5 onwards. So until Riot fixes that, just don't pick combat bandages. So I'd roll all 3 here. Volta rolls all 3, gets mentorship, team building, and golden remover. Mentorship is an augment that makes more sense if you're playing higher cost units to buff whatever your main carry is. And the second thing is that you also want to have a reason to position units next to each other and an excuse to clump. So mentorship makes sense in like warriors, for example, because if you're trying to carry Neela and Akali as 2 costs, a 3 cost like Katarina or even 4 costs can buff all of those units. And so that actually kind of makes sense. But the problem with mentorship in our situation is that Hecarim is going to be the highest costed unit, and we're not going to be playing any 4 or 5 costs unless we either second/front row Callista, which always has its risks, you can do that, or find Camille. Team building is quite solid for hitting Hecarim 3, and one thing to remember is that Hecarim is actually one of the hardest 3 costs to hit, so the value of a duplicator in Hecarim is higher than for other 3 costs because you're not playing Veigar on your board unless you're rerolling Veigar, but a lot of people play Hecarim because they want Arcana or they want Multi-Striker to activate Callista, or they want even just a Bastion unit. So team building ends up being a lot higher value for a contested reroll composition. Golden Remover is lower value than usual because we already have a remover, so we don't need it immediately. Like, you know, if we need it right now, why not just use this one right here? And then the component item anvil doesn't combine into anything we really want either because we have Hand of Justice already, so we would just be holding on to the component item anvil. You could argue that Golden Remover is higher value in loose subscription because you might get things like an artifact, and that might be really good for your carry. But again, we have this remover, so we don't need it right now. So I feel like team building is definitely the call here. Okay, after a quick scout around, we do agree and we take team building. And looking at these traits, a little unfortunate here because... Oh, we do have Pyro. Okay, so the 3 traits that we activated was Eldritch, Hunter, and Pyro. Eldritch off of the Elise, Hunter off of these units, and Pyro off of the Akali. Blasters are random tailored trait. There's no blaster. I think he was hoping for like Chrono or Multi-Striker, but he missed. But I think he's going to have to take Pyro here because that's the only thing that's acceptable for his final board. I do think that people probably get baited by having to go into like vertical Pyro. Just play Pyro as like an extra gold collector execute, but it doesn't give you gold. Just, you know, like an extra 10% true damage onto units that, you know, Callista or whatever unit you put a Pyro Emblem on can get the execute. He did end up losing his previous round, by the way. He leveled to 6 to try to play as many units as he can, because remember, you have to play 1 round of the board before you can open the Tome of Traits to count the previous round. He also, by the way, is not playing Pyro onto his board and instead playing his best board around Shapeshifter, Dragon Hunter. I actually think that's a good call, because some people would feel like they want to get Pyro in to get the Pyro values. Like, oh, you open this Tome of Traits, you're not getting value. The second would be to get Pyro stacks on the Cinders. But let's say he gets like, you know, 1 or 2 extra kills and stacks. That's like a couple of points of attack speed for his team, which is definitely helpful. You know, you're never upset about getting more team-wide attack speed, but it's not the biggest priority compared to what we talked about before, which is getting to level 7 and with as much HP and gold as possible. Going up against a Sugarcraft board with item grab bag, that's going to be a really scary board if this person gets online. But we're just really strong. Like, this 4 Shapeshifter board is looking like it's crushing a bunch of different things. So our tempo window is looking pretty good, even though we have no streak. On Carousel, there are 2 open swords, but they got taken, so we're going to take a bow. That's fine. Bow ends up making our utility items like Last Whisper and Red Buff. He gets offered Polymorph in the shop. Polymorph is actually really funny here because he only has 3 2 costs, Shyvana and these 2 Akalis, but he kind of wants both of them. Like, Akali is on his final board, and if he polymorphs Shyvana, he ends up losing his Dragon and Shapeshifter. So yeah, that doesn't actually want to do that. And I think that's really important. The second thing to note is that he actually didn't level here. If you actually count right now, he could level for 28 gold and actually sell off unwanted units to try and make 50. So a lot of people feel like it's a free level, but the reality is it's not a free level, because that also is EXP he doesn't get back into gold. And so if he levels to 7, by the time he starts rolling at 4-1, he's going to be 6 EXP into level 8, and that's not gold that he can use to roll. So right now he's pre-leveling instead, so that way he can be much more efficient and maximize his gold usage for rolling for 3 cost. And I think that's a really important detail, because a lot of people end up, you know, having a couple gold short to either stabilize or hit their unit. And remember, you want as much gold as you want for charms as well this set. So I think those are small things that Volta is doing very well, wisely, to maximize his odds of hitting on 7. Looks like we're getting crushed by a Blaster Vanguard board. So that's actually a good thing that someone else is playing 3 costs. They're going to be pulling Hueys and Vanguards out of the pool. Overall, things are looking good for us. Wow, he just rolls 1 time and hits Camille on 7. Oh my god. All right, well, that is a high roll, but it is loose subscription, and you have to remember, in loose subscription, everyone's high rolling for the most part, unless you're me. I never high roll on loose subscription. And so that is insanity. And now we can immediately start to think about playing the Chrono with the multi-strikers, and yeah, just getting the 7 multi-striker on 7 if he ends up hitting everything here. He ended up passing, I think, Casson previously, so I wonder if he regrets doing that. I think he wanted to play Katarina as another 3 cost to play for. Okay, we're just hitting all the 5 costs. We have Diana and we have Morgana. I think, unfortunately, they are not applicable right now, so you probably actually sell them for gold. Oh, interesting enough, we end up hitting the Callista, but we're playing 5 multi-striker instead of 7. Oh, it's because we don't have Kassadin. But we do have the Pyro Emblem, and we have Red Buff, and we have Even Shroud, by the way. Even Shroud's totally fine to play instead of Last Whisper. Narrow loss. I like that he didn't use his duplicator here, though, because I think he's going to need that for extra Hecarims. So looking at these augment choices, common bandages, we already talked about it. Don't pick it. It's bugged. Or at least if you do pick it, you have to be absolutely desperate or know that it's going to fall off. So you're going to have no gold augment later on. Stand United is actually quite good. He has 6 trades active, so it's 1580 AP. Which ends up being really good because multi-striker gives you a bunch of attacks, and so the way you amplify your DPS is every attack hits harder with more AD and more AP, so attack speed or multi-attacks with extra flat damage is good. Magic Wand is not applicable. We don't need the Rod, nor do we need more magic damage and ability power. So he does choose to roll options 1 and 3. Avenged Fallen is quite similar to Stand United, but it's conditional. You could justify that you're playing a lot of small allies that don't matter, like Jax, for example, but you kind of want to have those upfront stats because Avenged Fallen is a little bit like Ascension. Instead of saying after 3 allies die, imagine if they said after 12 seconds, 10 seconds of combat, you get this. I think I would just rather take the upfront, so that way I have those first 10 to 12 seconds of value. Because as you know, the first few seconds of the fight are often the most important because that's how you engage, that's how you get the damage, and that's often what snowballs the rest of the fight. And Ascension, by the way, doesn't really make sense because we're trying to play a fast comp. Multi-striker wants to rush their opponents, and Ascension is for stalling comps, so we're not really playing that. The argument could be that Avenged Fallen is more for the like hyper carries, right? You want to try to have Hecarim be stacked, but I think Stand United is just too much value. Plus, if we're playing loose subscription, we're going to probably find more ways to tag in more trades and more trades and more trades. Looks like he agrees, and he's going to take the free refreshes for, what, 20 seconds or something? Okay, looks like we get things like extra Shen, and we're at 5 Hecarims, which is great. We have duplicators, so we're ready to go for Hecarim 3. We're going to get it in 2 rounds, so we effectively have 7 Hecarims. We also make an even trad on Shen, so we have the anti-armor. Going up against 7 Eldritch, which has duo Q and Emilio 2, apparently. And Hecarim is having trouble getting through all these different targets. Oh my god, that Shen casted, though. That's really, really big. Oh, okay. Emilio only gave himself 2 adaptives, and that's a big win. That's a big win. Every single win that we can get in stage 4 before we hit Hecarim 3 is huge, because right now we're in our ramping period. We're trying to get stronger while a bunch of other people are spiking. Usually every single one of these turns you want to roll until you hit a charm. In this case, he does have the charm secured. You can always tell by this icon here if you need. So roll until charm is a really common strategy above 50 gold. This is a category 5 exiles with Frost Vares. That's very scary. Some of these boards are looking very powerful, and the scary part about these kinds of comps is that they could theoretically hit like another tome, another spatula, get to 9, and then get to 9 Frost. So if there is a lobby where this composition gets everything and doesn't win, I think loose subscription is potentially one of them. Okay, on carousel, we only get a rod. I think there was like vest and belt left over, so we're gonna pick up half of a rage blade or maybe a Katarina item. Looks like we took a component anvil, and we're rolling deeper here because we get our duplicator. So we're rolling for Hecarim 3. We're 1 off. Looks like he's gonna go for Death Cap. He reforges Steadfast Heart. Not really that good of an item. And goes for Vow immediately onto the Katarina. I think I would have gone for Vow on Shen and just keep the Death Cap open on Katarina, but that's also fine. And I like this variation. The more I'm seeing it, I kind of like that we're seeing a little bit of a duo carry here with Hecarim. So yeah, actually, this is really interesting variation because he's not actually going for 7 multi-strikers. And in the data, whenever you go for a Hecarim 3 carry, you generally want multi-strikers as soon as you can. For example, just looking at the data very quickly, if you put Hecarim 3 with Sterix Gauge and Unleash the Beast, and you type in multi-strikers, it just shows you that usually if you're playing 5 multi-strikers in the late stage of the game, your win rate, your top 4 rate is way lower, and your delta is very much swinging the opposite direction. So it's an interesting variation that he wants to prioritize Katarina carry. But hey, I love Kat. I think she's very, very strong. Taking a look at this item choice, looks like he's going to go for a Bloodthirster here. And he does have item remover, so he has a little bit of flexibility with how he wants to choose to do this. But chances are he's going to go for BT on Katarina. Hits in Akali 3. Still can't find Hecarim despite having 2 duplicators. Oh, last roll. And hey, we talked about how he kept that extra gold, and now look at what ends up happening. He gets that extra gold and is rewarded for not over leveling, because if he had that extra EXP, he would be closer to 8 and he wouldn't have that roll to hit that Hecarim. Case in point. And just look at this Hecarim damage just charged in. If it gets to the backline, it is lights out. I see the vision. I see that Katarina 3 ends up being really powerful as well and wipes a bunch of the other units alongside Hecarim. They both kind of dive in there. They charge, they blink in. And now we're off to the races. Looks like we got a ghost fight here, and everything looks good to go. Now we just have to push levels. So now he's winning, and he's doing it without 7 multi-strikers. So I'm curious how he wants to cap out. Maybe he wants to play 5 Pyro. Oh, he did hit Smolder. Okay, he actually sells it. Okay. But usually Smolder is one of the best Pyro holders. In these kinds of situations, it's kind of uncharted waters because, you know, we have a little bit of unusual resource distribution, and usually you don't really go for Katarina very commonly in the Hecarim based off the data that I'm looking at. And it's going to be hard to find 7 multi-striker because Ashe is a 1 cost and his odds are decreasing to find Ashe. So I am curious how he's going to cap out his board. I'm thinking 5 Pyro. I'm thinking either scale back the number of Pyros, like take out Shen and play Diana, and then go for like Diana and Briar. Oh my god, there's another Pyro emblem. Maybe he gets that instead. You can also go for a other item for Callista. Oh my god, he gets the Pyro. Okay, so now he's going to go for 5 Pyro, and this is a deviation of the line, which I really like. I wonder if there's a way for him to get like Pyro onto Katarina. That'd be so hype. Holy cow. Okay, now I wish we had the golden remover. Okay, we go Pyro instead onto a Camille, and now we have 4 Pyro, and this is where our level is with Arcana. He's debating the Arcana between Tahm Kench and the Hecarim, but Tahm Kench in general is probably lower values since you really care about the durability and the AD. Not to mention that he's also getting value off of the component. He's putting a Rod onto a Kali to get a little bit of item durability value. Easy 6 streak. And to save the game, if you look at the HP, top 4 is already secured. So we're now playing for extra credit and see if we can go for a win. It looks like he should be at least 3rd based off the HP total. He gets offered Phantom Emblem, so he can actually play for a 5 Pyro emblem. So he plays that temporarily. And I like this because he knows that he's probably not going to get to 9 for a very long time. So you might as well just take some of these combat charms to be stronger if you can and get the win. Oh, wow. This person is playing for 10 Eldritch. They have a Eldritch emblem as well as Eldritch on the target dummy through Wandering Trainer. So he actually is kind of a little bit on borrowed time. He needs to kill this person ASAP. Okay, that person's dead. That's huge. And that means that the 10 Eldritch player is off the table. And that's another reason why we need to be a little bit more aggressive. Who cares about getting 9 and playing another 5 cost if we can just kill them and be aggressive here? It's now down to a 1v1, and let's see if we can get the win here. All right, the loot subscription is a component, so we're going to just make, I guess, an item here. Could have reforged if he wanted to. He's thinking about another item for one of his multi-strikers. He ends up putting a Quicksilver on a Kali. I think that's fine. A Kali is a 3-star unit, so just itemize your 3 stars. That's totally fine. I was thinking like if he could find a way to itemize Camille, but I realized that this is the end stages of the game. He's not going to hit Camille 2, very likely. The one thing I will say is I kind of wish he either rolled for a charm or considered buying the count, because that would end up influencing things. But I think he just took a lot of time to make his decision, and it doesn't matter. He's not picking a charm, and he's still winning. So now he rolls, gets a temporary artifact, Light Shield Crest, probably on Shin. He's also still not rolling, so this is a way for him to hedge. He rolls to hit a charm. If he loses, that's fine. He has enough gold to push to 9, and also he still has enough gold to save in case he needs to send it to 0 and roll for the best charm possible. His opponent has no real chance of improving. I think his opponent also stuck on 8. I do not see like a Diana 2. He's also rolling for Swain 3. He's at 0 gold. I'm pretty sure Voltairix has done it and closed out the game because he's like winning without actually spending a lot of his resources. So he's in a down position. Rolls for 10 Pyro Cinders, so he gets team-wide attack speed. And yeah, no 7 multi-striker, no problem. Again, like finding an alternative way to win the game despite going against the conventional wisdom. All right, a side swap, which should be the last fight of the game. He kind of wants the Hecarim to actually charge close to the Varus. So that's part of the reason why he went on the right side. A little bit of a bulldoze situation. And it's a complete win out. Oh, it's not actually a win out. Never mind. I thought he eliminated him here. Oh, good thing he actually stopped the Eldritch player because they would have gotten 10 Eldritch. Holy cow. And he picks up the Diana. He denies the Diana and he gets a 5th Pyro. His opponent just concedes. I totally get it. Insane game for Voltairix. So there you have it. Hecarim is one of the strongest 3 costs that you can go for in the entire game if you can get the right items and the setup for it. It's not going to be every game that you queue into, but if you keep an eye out for it, you might see more spots and openings than you actually imagine. So make sure you give it a try. Let me know how it's going in the comments below, and I'll see you guys next time.